So I just saw The Disaster Artist, and it was pretty enjoyable. For those of you who don't know, this is a feature film directed by and starring James Franco about the infamous movie The Room, which many people consider to be the greatest so bad that it's good movie of all time. Now, whether or not you agree with that, it's difficult to deny that many scenes in The Room are both hilarious and insanely quotable.
You are lying. I never hit you. You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Now, a lot of people have been really excited for this movie for quite a while now. I tried to get tickets to The Disaster Artist when I was at Toronto Film Fest, but unfortunately they sold out before I could even get them. When I was visiting LA last week, I tried to get tickets to the screening at AFI Fest, but that didn't work out either. But fortunately enough, there just so happened to be an early screening at the Rio when I got back to Vancouver. The Rio, one of my favorite local theaters that I've mentioned before on this channel, hosts something called the Rio Grind Film Festival, and The Disaster Artist was one of the films playing. Even when the festival isn't happening, the Rio always seems to have a good selection of interesting films. It's at this very theater that James Franco actually saw The Room back in November 2013. For those of you who don't know, The Room has achieved such a cult status that it regularly plays sold-out midnight screenings across the world. I myself have attended such a screening, and it was a hilariously enjoyable experience. Although keep in mind, if you're looking to experience The Room for the first time, this may or may not be the right environment for you. If you genuinely want to hear every line in the film, it's a little difficult when everybody's yelling the whole time, but if you're not really interested in seeing this film without a laughing crowd anyway, then you might as well be doing it like this. Anyway, James Franco attended one of these showings of The Room at the Rio back in 2013, and Greg Sestero was there doing a book signing. Greg Sestero was the actor in The Room that played Mark, and he's the one that wrote the book The Disaster Artist that this new film is based on. Anyway, my friend Michael Rush was managing the Rio at the time and wound up introducing Greg Sestero and James Franco. So it's pretty cool I got to see The Disaster Artist at this theater, considering there's a bit of history regarding the making of this film. Now, when the first trailer came out, I wasn't entirely convinced. A lot of people became excited that this film was being made, and the performance we saw from James Franco was pretty great, but it started to seem like it would become one of those films that people would love no matter what just because of its source material and the connections to the original film. You know, all you have to do is say, "Oh, hi, Mark," enough times, and people will think it's the funniest film ever made. Now, after actually seeing The Disaster Artist, were my suspicions confirmed? Yes and no. Allow me to explain. Now, like I said, I enjoyed this film, and I would recommend it to both fans of The Room and anyone else. The best feature that James Franco brought to this film was his performance. James Franco does a great Tommy Wiseau impression, and I couldn't imagine any other Hollywood actor doing a better job at it. That being said, part of me doesn't really understand why Tommy Wiseau couldn't have just played himself. I mean, as far as I can tell, Tommy Wiseau doesn't really act any differently when he's acting versus when he's not acting, but I guess I can understand that if they did that, they wouldn't really be able to sell it to mainstream audiences, and watching the film, it's abundantly clear that that was definitely one of their concerns. This is not just a film that markets itself as a James Franco, Seth Rogen comedy, but it's one that has celebrity cameos every 5 fucking minutes, and I fail to see both the point and how it's supposed to benefit the film at all. You've got such great source material to work with, why do you feel as though the punchline needs to be, "Hey, I recognize this actor"? To be completely honest, the source material was the best part of the movie, and remember, I'm still giving this a positive review. It's just that aside from his performance, James Franco didn't really bring anything to this project. There are literally 0 things special about the directing and cinematography. There's literally 0 things special about the music. The entire film is presented noticeably handheld, and it just feels so awkward, purposeless, and unfitting. Almost everything that could be attributed to the directing and cinematography was kinda lame. With a different director, this film could have been so much more. I mean, I'm still thankful that this project exists, and without James Franco, it might not have. But it's clear that his acting talents far outweigh that of his directing. And don't you dare use that cop-out shitty excuse that, oh, because this movie's about The Room, that means that everything in the movie that's not great means it's supposed to be that way. That is absolute bullshit, and if they were trying to go for anything like that, then it would be noticeably terrible instead of just unspecial and uninspired. To assume that is to completely ignore the fact that James Franco has directed like 30 fucking movies that nobody gives a shit about. Oh, what, you didn't know that? Well, yeah, there's a reason.
I don't care what we do, just so long as we do something. Sitting here not doing a goddamn thing.
I saw something Duke Dale told me not to tell nobody. It's not about Paul, and it's not about Cash, and it's not about Joel, and it's not about Dewey Dale, and it's not about me.
The reason why the directing is boring and unspecial is because that's just what James Franco does. Nobody gave a shit about him directing anything until he stumbled across this source material that, quite honestly, is too good for him, at least as a director. And it almost kinda sucks because you can tell he's really passionate about this project. I wholeheartedly believe that this isn't just some cash grab to him. The opening scene of the film is essentially a love letter to the fearlessness of Tommy Wiseau. It genuinely feels as though James Franco understands and respects the character he's performing, but aside from his performance, what he brought to the film wasn't all that great. Dave Franco's performance was good, but he didn't really feel all that much like a Greg Sestero. And on top of all that, there were some really questionable choices with how they decided to present the story. Like, the end of this film is just flat out inaccurate. Instead of having Tommy Wiseau slowly discover the cult nature of his film through various screenings, they just smushed everything into the one premiere screening that him and his cast members attended. And so everyone in the theater that worked on The Room is just laughing at the top of their lungs so incredibly cheesily and unrealistically, and the character of Tommy Wiseau just warms up to it and changes his mind on the spot. I'm sorry, but that's fucking stupid. You couldn't have filmed 10 more minutes to show how it actually happened? Why even make that change if it's going to be for the worse? There is one aspect of the filmmaking that I did quite enjoy. As they're screening The Room in the film, we get to watch it. Basically, we get to see a bunch of classic scenes from The Room recreated using actors from The Disaster Artist. And from a purely visual standpoint, it's pretty identical. It seems as though they put a lot of care into recreating those scenes. But unfortunately, there's one aspect about these scenes that they really obviously overlooked. Despite the amount of detail they put into the visual recreation, they did jack shit for audio. Like, how do they not understand that one of the most iconic aspects to these scenes is that they're noticeably dubbed?
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
In the recreation of these scenes in The Disaster Artist, they don't even bother to dub it at all. Hell, you could have used the exact same audio from the actual movie The Room. It's genuinely baffling to see how they could have missed this. Part of what makes the flower shop scene so incredibly hilarious is that the dubs are layered over top of each other in a way where the characters are essentially interrupting each other.
Hi.
Can I help you?
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
But when the disaster artist recreates this scene, that aspect is not there at all. Like, haha, he said hi doggy, that's what makes it funny, right? When we see their recreation, the characters are not even interrupting each other. They literally ignored one of the best aspects as though it was never even there. Hell, they even missed out on an opportunity to have a scene of characters re-recording their lines in post. That could have been funny, right? Anyway, I've obviously got my gripes with this movie, but it was still a fun and entertaining watch overall. Even though it had much more potential than what it turned out to be, I'm glad that it exists and there's aspects to it that I did really enjoy. Whether you're a fan of The Room or not, I'd recommend checking this one out, and I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. Oh, and by the way, for anyone in Vancouver who's interested, there is a midnight screening of The Room at the Rio on December 8th. So if you've never done the live experience before, here's your chance. Also, when I was in LA last week, I checked out the hilariously bad film called Geostorm. If you want to see my thoughts on that shitty movie, feel free to check out the video I did with Funhouse. In order for the assassination to even work, the person standing behind him in the crowd at the crosswalk would have to know that he's going to be there at the exact moment that the other guy is also driving. So it was implied that the guy behind him that pushed him and the guy driving the car were both in on it, even though there was like a crowd of people, some traffic, and they had no way of influencing when the guy that they were targeting would show up. And it didn't show the car like parked somewhere, and then just it just happened to work out really well.
They didn't explain the lore. That guy's actually tried multiple times to shove that dude into traffic.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
They did that at like 3 other crosswalks.
Yeah. And every time he just takes a step out.
What
the hell,
not
man?
gonna work this time.
Goes on to the cafe.
Well, then it moves on from there. So now it's
They invited me for a movie podcast thing on their channel, and I feel like I said everything I really wanted to say about it there. So check out the link in the description if you want to check it out. Thanks. Peace.